Hello, everybody. Welcome to the BE SalesRICH webinar that we are doing today. We're going to be talking about who do you need to become to be sales rich or develop a sales team that is sales rich. So, I really want to thank everybody here today for joining. I appreciate you investing your time with us today. A wise man once said that, time is your most valuable asset. You could always spend your money, but once you spent your money, you could always make more. But once you spent your time, it's gone forever. So you really, and it's how we invest our time is really the secret to our success. Because business doesn't mean busyness, that I'm running around, I'm doing, because that's what we talk about in sales. It's sales is about activity. Yes, it's about activity, and activity leads to results, but we need to focus on is what is the right type of activity that we need to be focusing on to be able to create a team of professional salespeople and to be able to create some rock star salespeople out there. Hope that makes sense to everybody. So let's talk a little bit. Let me introduce myself here. Start off is my name is Steve Goranson. My company is Action Coach Business Coaching. I own and operate the Jacksonville office of Action Coach here for the past 15 years, or actually going into just starting my 16th year as a coach. My background's in advertising, sales, marketing research. From the time I've grown up, I've always done sales, and sales is sort of really as a profession that I love. And really what I like to say is when I'm working with my clients is that my clients are working smarter, not harder. And I hope that sort of interests you, is how do we get ourselves working smarter, not harder, to really get our businesses working harder so we don't have to, and we can enjoy more life. So, and really a lot of this, it really takes a plan and a proven methodology, and that's what I want to talk about today. All right, so we ready to begin? Let's go ahead and get started. So have you ever really wondered why 80% of your sales comes from 20% of your reps? What's the difference between your best reps out there and just the average reps, the guys that are just going in and just going through the motions and doing their thing, and sometimes they come back with a big sale, but a lot of times they're coming back with no traction hitting the road, if you will. So it's really that is professional salespeople, or I like to even call it those rock star sales reps. They don't wing it, because if we sit down and we look at it, what's our biggest sales out there, or challenges out there? A lot of times is we don't have a very viable sales plan that's customized to a very specific prospect. We have this cookie cutter approach to our sales, and we try to sell to everyone the same way. We just sort of wing it. A friend of mine once told me is that winging it is not a strategy. Another challenge that a lot of salespeople have and sales teams have is creating that differentiation between themselves and their competition. They don't know how to sell on value, so they have to sell on price. And we're going to spend a lot of time in trying to how to talk about that. Or how do we immediately gain prospect engagement? So if we don't know how to gain our prospects attention and really earn the right to keep engaging, because as soon as you get them on the phone, what you need to be doing is selling them on the next 30 seconds, the next minute, that they'll allow you to talk with them. And that's really what it's all about. Or do we, sometimes our challenge is we don't have the right questions, or to be able to question with a purpose, not necessarily from using a script and an interrogation, but a questioning funnel that's designed to identify our clients' compelling needs and what those are. We're going to talk about what our compelling needs is compared to just the regular needs that are out there. Or this is probably the number one, is handling price objections, or the fear of negotiating. As we're going to talk about, we never lose a sale based on price. We only lose it based on what? On value. Right, exactly. And so we don't know how to handle those price objections because we don't have a systematic way of showing value to our clients. And then really the last one is that we just plainly we just wing it. Once we ask for the sale, that's where the negotiations begin, and we just sort of winging it and sort of sees what's happening. We don't know what to negotiate or how to negotiate. And we're going to today cover each of these challenges and today and sort of how do we put that into a sales methodology, a sales playbook for you, so you could be able to, you and your sales team could go in and can sell consistently on value and not on price. So with that said, we're going to get started. And when you sit down and you look at it, professional salespeople find it a challenge if they don't have a sales plan. Right? What we need to do is create that methodology, that process that gets that consistency going within our sales team. So let's go back. We'll start a little slow and let's go back to some sales basics. Sales starts with the right mindset. If you don't think you can sell, you're right, you can't. So where does that mindset comes from? And the reason we can't sell sometimes is because our values get in the way. Because what are beliefs? Beliefs are things that we hold to be true, but values are deeper than our beliefs, and sometimes those values that we have get in our way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. What does that actually mean? So to get started, I want you to sit down, just get a little scrap paper there. Hopefully you're taking some notes, but write down what are the 3 beliefs that you have when it comes to when you think about salespeople. Just write them out. What are the 3 beliefs that you have when it comes to salespeople? Because that's really what it is. It's who we are, right? So what are the first 3 things that pop into your mind? And what I find is when I ask this question over and over again on live events, the things that I come up with is pushy, or used car sales. If you look at, these are the most common, and it'd be interesting to see if you had any of these types of words here yourself, right? They're not really positive. So now the question is, who do we need to become a professional salesperson? See, the reason our values are getting away and that we have a hard time, let's say, closing is because we're basically good people. We don't want to be that pushy, manipulative salesperson. So what we're going to have is we're going to try to make sure that we're not going to do that. So we overcompensate, and we then have a hard time closing the deal. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Who do we need to become to be able to sell more? So when you sit down and you look at it, there's 2 types of salespeople. You got the old used car salesperson, and then you got the new professional salespeople. If you go into the Apple store, they're there to help you. And obviously their job is to sell you. They're salespeople, but what they're trying to do is help you to professionally buy. And that's really what sales is all about. Because when you sit down and you look at what old sales selling is, what the old model is, it's really coming down, and we'll talk a little bit about you. We're going to spend a whole bunch of time talking about me and how great I am. And since I really don't know what your needs are and what your compelling needs are, then I'm going to have to spend a whole lot of time helping you make that decision. So that's where in the past, all the sales training was all about how do we close a deal better? What are all the different closing techniques, and how can I manipulate my prospects so they can say yes? But really becoming a professional salesperson, what does that mean? We reverse the model. We're more client-centric instead of self-centric. So we're spending most of the time trying to find out, what does our clients want? What are their compelling needs? What are they trying to accomplish right now? What's their biggest problem that they have? And then what we need to do is let them know a little bit about who we are and who our company is, because we need to be credible in their minds. And then we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then once we understand what their compelling needs are, they feel comfortable and they trust us. The decision is the last part of the equation. We don't have to necessarily close them. Naturally, the sales should occur. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. because their sales defense mechanism comes up because we're trained so much that we've been sold crap that we really don't need. So we're going to put up our defenses so we don't get sold anything. So we need to have techniques that really help them lower that shield and to help them to make the best decision for them. So when it comes down to creating a salesperson, creating that rock star sales rep, it starts with changing behavior, right? When we sit down and we talk about what success is, it really comes down to two different things. And people that I've worked with for many years know this, that we need to have clarity on what we want, what we need to achieve, or in this case, what does our client want? And then what actions do we need to take to get to that success? So when we sit down and we look, sorry, went back a little bit. So when we come back to it, is Action Coach has this formula of life success. It's be, do, have. So if we want to have more sales, we want to have more clients, there's some necessary things that we need to do. But if I told you right now to be successful in sales, you just have to work twice as hard than you are right now, you're probably thinking, Steve, you're nuts. I don't have enough time as it is. How do I do this? So let's look at this formula a little bit more closely, because it is a formula. It's be times do equals have, right? To have the things that we want, there's certain things that we necessarily have to do. But we all know what we need to do to be successful, so why are we not doing those things? Because we haven't become that person yet. You know, Brad Sugar's, the founder of Action Coach, says is, you know, we have to set these big goals for ourselves. And what happens if we don't set, what happens when we do set big goals is the people around us will start laughing at us and laughing at these big, outrageous goals that we have. And why are they laughing at us? Because they see the person that we are right now. And they're right. The person that we are right now has not become that person that we need to become to achieve that goal. But what we're seeing ourselves as who we need to become to be able to reach that. And that's going to really be the thing that will stop us from where we are now to help us where we want to go if we don't become that person. So we need to become more. And basically, becoming more is based on who we are. So we do based on who we are, and we are who we think, right? You know, so we need to sort of really change our thoughts, our behaviors to be more, to do more. So if we want to change, there's always that resistance to change. A lot of us have seen this before. That's on this webinar. There's the resistance to change. So if I'm trying to create a new sales team and try to put together a new way of being able for them to go out and to train it, there's going to be a resistance because they are so used to selling the way that they've always done, and some of them are probably pretty successful, but we want to create and identify a consistent methodology so they can be successful more times than not. So what we need to do is, and why do we have that resistance, is because our satisfaction hasn't overcome that resistance, right? You know, we all procrastinate. And why do we procrastinate? Because the pain of procrastination is less than the pain of actually having to do something, right? So how do we increase that dissatisfaction? Is we need to create a vision, right? Do I have the things that I want? Do you want to put your kids into private school, right? And maybe I can't, or do I want to take that family on that great vacation, or I want to be able to expand and open up another office? But if I'm not thinking about those things that I want, that big vision of what I want, and I won't be dissatisfied where I'm at. I'll just be stuck in my comfort zone. But we still are stuck, even if we have that vision, because we don't know where to go. Our salespeople, even if we say, hey, this is what you set your goals and whatnot, but what we need to do is create the first steps. We need to create that methodology and show them how, by following this plan, they can go ahead and they could reach the goals that they want, right? So this is really a very powerful formula that we're going to sort of refer to a little bit through in this. But most importantly, professional salespeople do a couple of things. The first one that really makes them stand out among all their peers. Same thing if you look at professional athletes or any professions in any field, is they're always training. And then when they get done training, they're training some more. And they will get done training, they're going to train again. And then they're going to train again. So, looking at what type of training are you doing right now? Is it is it generic sales training? Or is your sales training that you're doing, or your salespeople are doing, is it customized to help them to uncover what client needs are and how to match them with your credible solutions? And I think that's sort of the key that we need to be thinking about. Because when it comes to learning, there's 4 steps. We all start with unconscious incompetence. We don't know that we don't know what we're doing, right? It's like the first time we started driving, when we were little, everybody thinks, hey, I could step into this car and I could drive this car, until you get behind this wheel and it's like, holy crap, I could cause a lot of damage with this machine, right? And then the next step is, and so that's where the conscious incompetence, I realize I don't know what I'm doing. But then we start working and we start doing a little bit more, and we get to the level of conscious competence, that we know what we're doing, right? And because what is it we could sit there and we drive, we know what we need to do, we're paying attention. But then the last level is unconscious competence. This is where we could be sitting down and we could be driving, and we don't have to look about where the mirrors are they set, and my seat correct, and my hands on the wheel. No, we're just driving, we're multitasking, we're drinking our coffee, we're talking on the phone, we're taking notes down, we're doing all this, we're texting, right? And the thing is that we think that we're so good when we're texting, but boom, what happens? Many disasters are happening from that, right? But the thing is that we sit down and we look at where we think that we know it. It's becoming a habit. It's really is the point that we're at. But what happens is we go back to that unconscious incompetence again. It's a cycle, because a lot of times what I've seen with with businesses, they get in the zone, they have the system and everything. When everything is doing really well, it's easy for them to cut their sales process out, or cut a lot of their processes out, and because they don't need to. It's like, oh, okay, if you don't want to buy from me, hey, there's 3 other people standing in line. I don't have to go through this whole process. It's easier for me to just sell somebody. But as soon as the economy drops, and it will, things are good, maybe for another year or so, but things are going to drop back down. It always does. It's a cycle of business. And what happens if we're not following our consistent methodology and strategy, those leads and those sales are going to go away until we figure out that, hey, I need to go back to what I used to be doing, right? Does that make sense? So let's go down and let's start on our little journey here on creating our sales methodology and using what I call is the single sales principle. It's really simple. It's really simple. It's 15 words and with 3 major key elements within it. And it's based on this book called Mark Blackmore, The Single Sales Principle, The 8 Myths of Selling. And it really comes down to this. People buy when there's a compelling need that is met by a credible solution that offers perceived value. There's 3 components: compelling need, credible solution, and perceived value. I always tell people is that we don't lose a sale based on price. We lose it because of perceived value. We haven't created enough value in the minds of our prospects that they are willing to invest in our solution. So let's take a look at, let's go back on the wrong way. So there should be 3 parts of your sales playbook, right? And the first part is creating a winning proposition. This is when we sit down and we identify what are all the possible compelling needs of our prospects. Because if we could sit down and think ahead, it's easier to then spot those needs that can be compelling and be able to differentiate a compelling need from just a regular need. I gotta have to, I like to have. We need to understand what is our credible solution that we offer that matches each of these compelling needs, and how do we compare against our competitor, right? And who's our competitor? Anyone that our prospects compare us to. They are a competitor, right? And then the last one is, what are our credibility tools, We have to create those tools so when we're out and about that we have the ability to be creating tools when we are presenting. Because really when it comes down to things is, and then that's really where the second step comes into is now we're presenting our value proposition. We have a script framework that we utilize to help us to identify those compelling needs and to lead to understand what our credible solutions will fit. We've created a questioning funnel that our salespeople that we follow every time to help us to lead our clients down that to be able to understand what those compelling needs, because those compelling needs are things that are really close to the chest of our clients. They don't necessarily give that information up so easily. Then what are our case studies and killer stats that we have already thought of, our wins that we could share with our clients, and so that, hey, how has our solution helped people just like them? And then finally, the last one is our negotiation mastery, is how are we handling objections? Are we winging it, or do we have a very specific approach? Do we have negotiation strategies? Do we have those, are we using those value tools that we've created earlier? And do we have a very specific negotiation plan that we're going to be working at? All right, so now let's go through each of these, because becoming a rock star sales rep is selling on value and not on price. And let's show how each of these three components are going to help us do that. So the first one, as I talked about, is winning proposition. We need to know and to understand what our clients' compelling needs are for different clients, right? We need to know the differences between a feature, an advantage, and a benefit. An advantage is what our product does. The benefit is what it does for our clients, right? Most prospects know what maybe most of our sales reps know what our prospects' needs are, but do they know the difference between that regular need and that compelling need that I like to have to I gotta have? Because it's the gotta have, once they understand once they understand the gotta have, now when we create our solutions to solve that problem, they are more likely to buy, because that's something that they want to do, but they're not going to give that up so easily, right? So we need to sit down and we need to identify and being able to understand our credible solutions. What needs to be credible? First, our product and service has to be credible. Our company needs to have a level of credibility. And then the salesperson themselves, need to have credible, because everybody buys from who they like and trust. When everything is the same, that's how they're going to make the decision, right? So we need to have some credible solution tools. What are those? Or what are some of associations that we're about? Client testimonials are another way of creating solution tools, or any awards or accreditations that our company has, or we personally have within our industry, or what are our ESTS? What are our ESTs? What are we best at? Or we're the easiest, or we're the fastest, or we're the simplest. We need to understand that, so we know when we're talking about this makes us different from our competition, because we need to understand how to differentiate ourselves from our competition and in the mind, because that's who they're comparing us to. So we need to have some sort of a competitor or analysis that we use. And I like to use it's what's called as a squiggly line exercise. And this is a list where we list all the different criteria of the buyers, and we do this exercise with the salespeople. And then we look at it from the mindset of our prospects. What are the different criteria that they use to purchase our product or service, right? Then we're going to take a look at each criteria and see on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, is how well, from our client's perspective, not ours, do we deliver on each of these criteria. So we'll go ahead and we'll put an X into each of these different criteria. Then when we're done, we're going to go ahead and pick a competitor. And we're going to sit down and say, how well do they do? So the first criteria, we're doing a lot better than they are. They're just sort of average. We're pretty similar when it comes to criteria number 2. Criteria 3, they're a little bit better than us, not that much better. We're about the same on criteria 4, and okay, there's a big gap again on criteria 5. So this is where the squiggly line comes in. So now we sort of like connect the dots. Okay, we sort of take a look at where we're at, we take a look at where the competition is, and then what happens is those big gaps that we see over here, this is where our biggest advantages are in these 2 areas, right? This area and what we need to do is on areas like on here where they're a lot better than us, this might be a need, but it might not necessarily be so compelling. So what can we do in this instance to be better, or to just sort of not make that as important to the client as well? And the same thing down in here. But we need to do this exercise to who our major competitors are, so we know what are the things that we need to promote, like criteria 1 and criteria 2 is what we need to, because if they're focusing on here, there's not much differentiation between us on these 2 other points. So we need to focus on these 2 areas. But unless we sit down and take this exercise before we actually start the sales process, and we're training our salespeople on this, that they know when they're actually creating a conversation and a dialogue, it's not going to happen. They're just going to wing it, right? So again, this is really to identify on these criteria what's the nice to have versus the gotta have. Hope that makes sense to everybody in there. I know I sort of went through it pretty quickly in there. So what it comes down to is we've created that winning proposition. The next one is, or we've created that winning proposition. So the next step is understanding what type of proposition are we selling. So are we doing a proposition concept or a proposition S? So what are we selling? So there's 2 different types of propositions that we're looking at. So when we sit down, and the proposition is that your way is better as compared to why your product is better. So let me give you an example. So when we sit down, and when cell phones first came out, nobody had a cell phone. So they had to sell us not on why their cell phone was the best, but why do I need to lug this big brick around wherever I go, right? And nobody liked doing that brick, so they started making the phones a little bit smaller and whatever. But as more and more people bought cell phones, and now everybody has to have a cell phone, we can't live without them. So now it's, why is my cell phone better than your cell phone, right? So we need to understand within our sales process is what we're selling. Are we selling a proposition concept, something that's new or a different way of doing things? So that's a different type of sell, as compared to that proposition edge is, okay, we both do the same thing, but why is the way I do it better than yours, right? So we need to sit down, and we need this. The second step is about creating that sales process, right? So first part was we created that winning proposition. So now we need to sit down and get it. So there's a 5-step process that we're going to follow within here. And this is not a script, it's not a prescriptive type of way, but it's a flow design to ensure that the customer is front and center of everything that you do and maximizes your chance for success. So it's a series of sort of signposts, but not the map of the whole destination, because that's up to you, and then it's also based on the particular client that you were selling. So it has that, the process has that ability to be customizable and do it. Because when you wing it, sales are going to be inconsistent. But when you follow a systematic approach, if done correctly, that leads to what I like to say is more happy customers. So let's take a look at what are the 5 different steps that we have here. So first is define. That's sort of what we've just sort of been talking about. This is part of the sales process that happens before any intervention, any contact with the customer. The purpose of this step is to prepare a robust and exciting value proposition. We sort of talked about that whole first step there before. Well, the next part is now, how do we engage our prospects? Are our prospects coming to us, or do we have to go out and be marketing to them? But this is, do we have a systematic approach of how we engage somebody for the first time? How do we get them, if we're doing cold calling, how do we get them to take our call? How do we persuade them to actually listen to us after they pick up that call? Or, what will make them sit up and take notice to us that they want to call our company to do business with us? So this step, it needs to be something that creates excitement, creates some curiosity. What can they do? And this does, and the process is really the same whether you're out there networking, you're cold calling, or just in the beginning of the start of the meeting. The basic elements are the same. So, and because it's the same, it makes it easier to be repetitive over and over again on the different parts of how we engage a prospect. So like for example, so when I meet somebody for the first time and they don't know who I am, it's just, I guess you can call this my elevator speech is, hey, I'm Steve Gornson with Action Coach Business Coaching. We're the world's largest coaching organization, over 1,000 offices, 70 different countries around the world, okay? Establish some credibility up front. Well, my clients work smarter, not harder. Now, doesn't that sound intriguing, right? We all want to do that. But how we do that is I get business owners to get their businesses working harder so they don't have to, they can enjoy more life. Be interested in finding out more about that. So it's a little bit intriguing, got them sort of tied to a couple of different challenges that a lot of businesses have on lack of time and not being able to do the things they want. So once we engage the prospect, the third step is probe. This is, and what are we probing for is identifying those golden nuggets, those compelling needs that are going to make the sale. And the better the questions that we ask, the better we are at identifying those needs. And then we need to understand how motivated is that client to act on those needs. Are they important enough to consider our solution? Do we have a very specific questioning funnel that'll help us lead a client down to help us identify what that client compelling need is? Because remember, those compelling needs, they're holding close to their chest. They don't want to give that up. That's the secret sauce that we're trying to get to. So we need to be able to sit down and to dig deep to be able to get those little really precious gold nuggets, if you will. And so we need to identify first is what we call as IQ questions. What are, that's the basic information, qualifying questions to make sure that this is the right type of prospect for us, that we can actually help them up front. Then we need to ask like compelling need questions, right? These are going to identify what the rational and emotional needs that are affecting the prospect. Because again, we buy 80% on emotion, 20% on logic. So we need to understand what's the emotion that's going to go on behind the sale. Then once we understand that what that compelling needs, we need to really test the motivation of these needs. The motivation question, testing motivation question is how important is this need to the customer? Is it a regular need or is this a really compelling need, right? And then the next one, we have to test intention. If we found a solution for it, are they willing to invest in that or act upon that? Because if not, then it's not really a compelling need. It's, yeah, I'd like to have that, but I'm not going to spend any money on it. I'd rather be doing this. I need to fix this. So once we identify what that compelling need is, now it's the propose, right? Is what is our solution to their problem, their compelling need? If it doesn't, our solution doesn't solve their compelling need, it isn't a benefit. It might just be an advantage. And we have to also remember that different people absorb information in different ways. So we need to be able to talk in the language of our prospect and understand how to, because communication is the response we get. If we don't communicate in a proper way, or in the way they are used to communicating in their communication style, we're not going to connect with them. And then finally is the close, is step 5. So if we've delivered everything in the right way and on the first 4 steps, the easiest, this should be the easiest step of all. The customer at this stage should be asking us to buy, right? But they don't, right? Decision makers will procrastinate, and at times they'll need a helping hand to make a decision. Why? Because once you proposed, their buying defense mechanism goes up. It's like, warning, warning, they're trying to sell me, right? So we have to, how can we sit down and bring down their guard and help them make that purchase? And that's where the third step of becoming a sales rock star, creating a sales rock star team, is what is your system to negotiating and closing the sale? Because once we ask for the order, this is where negotiation starts. And what are we negotiating? That's the thing. That's the problem. People don't know what we're not negotiating price. We're negotiating value. So, our credible solution could be outstanding. We've met that client's customers' compelling needs, but in a way, it all comes down to, in their mind, is price. So how can we prove to the customer that we offer value to that price, right? So we need to make sure that this is where we pull out out of our pocket our value tools, right? Some of our value tools that we have is I don't like using discounting, but how can we add value to it? So instead of discounting it, we'll say, okay, if you buy 3, you'll get the 4th one for free, right? Or you buy 2, you get the 3rd one at 50% off, right? Other things is providing options, because once we provide options and we're surrounding it by different things, now value can easily be established. Or sometimes is offering those freebies, as I sort of said before. Or another value tool is scarcity. Hey, if you want to do this project, you need to book with us now. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to start it for another 3 months. Boom. That's creating some scarcity, creates value for them making a decision right now. So what I want to talk about is okay, so how do we create perceived value? Another one is an anchor reset, right? Is what are we comparing it to? And I have this great example that I love using. It's called the toothpaste challenge. Let's take a look at it. So across the bottom, we're looking at the price. So as our price goes up, and this is the value line right over here, is going right up the middle. So as our price goes up, and then also so does their compelling need and our credible solution to meet that need, we could charge a higher price. If there's a low need down here and we have a low valued solution, we can only charge so much. So let's take a look at it. If you go to the grocery store, you go to Walmart, there's a whole aisle filled with different brands of toothpaste. And then one brand can have 20 different types of toothpaste that they have. So within it, we have, the cheap end on it, the low end of the deal is just like sort of the generic brand out there. Then we have the name brand one, the one that everybody trusts and go in there. But then also, 2 is we have some of the more specialty ones. You don't like all the chemicals in the other one, so this one is chemical free. It's more organic, right? And then the last one, it's more advanced. It's really, you're going for an image, right? I want to have the whitest and brightest teeth. But when you sit down, you look at it, the cheapest one is costing like $1.25. The next one's $3.50. The green is you're going to pay twice as much for over the trusted value one. But it's also, if you look at it, it's also smaller. So you're actually even paying more than that if you look at it per ounce. And then the image is $8.50. So how can I sell somebody that $8.50 packet of toothpaste when they say I could just buy one at $1.25 and it's tooth? So some people, this is all that they want. That they just want to just brush their teeth, make sure they just don't have any cavities, and the cheapest. They're all toothpaste are the same. But now, but how can I go ahead and really? Why, sit there? It's a small toothpaste for $8.50. I could buy like 20 of them, 20 of the smaller versions of the Colgates for this one that have the same amount of toothpaste. But we don't compare that image toothpaste, that whitening toothpaste, to Colgate. What we compare it to is spending $350 by going to the dentist and getting that whitening. So $350 to $8.50. Wow, that's a great deal, right? So again, if you're on a budget, you're going to get that cheap one. If I wanted that trusted brand, I'd go with the name brand because of the advertising convinced me that they're the best and the greatest. But if I had a more natural need which is and wanted that natural ingredients, and the name brand might not work for me, and because due to the chemicals or other things that I don't like in it. And so I'll pay a premium to be able to get a more natural product. And again, if the image is more important, with advanced whitening, I'm going to even pay even more because my need is greater, right? So that's where we need to sit down and to become, and we need to understand what are we comparing it to. So when we sit down and we look at it, there's the 5 value tools negotiation is a good thing. Sometimes when negotiation also doesn't happen, it doesn't take place, there's a danger of saying, oh man, that guy said yes too quickly. I could have probably doubled the price and got that same sale, right? Or it could be the other way around, is they bought it, they didn't, but you really don't know if they they just think it was like, they might think it's like overpriced, but they needed it right there. They feel that they were taken advantage of. And so you're not going to get any referrals, you're not going to come back. You put a bad taste in their mouth, if you will, right? But when you sit down and you look at it, what's the biggest bottleneck in sales is handling objections. And do you have a process that everybody is following that creates a consistent way of handling objections? Because usually what happens is they throw an objection out, we answer it, and then they throw us another one, and then they throw us another one. And we're not getting anywhere. They're just stalling because they don't want to make that decision. They're putting that fence up to keep themselves from buying. But this is the process in which we lower the fence to help them understand that they're making a good decision. So we call it the Erica process. First, it starts out with E. E is empathizing with them. Is we need to get on their side, show them that we're listening. You know, hey, I appreciate your concern. Hey, other people have shared that same concern with me. Boom. What then we need to do is refine it. Is get some clarity. Is this a real objection, or is this just a stall? So can you give me more details? How are you feeling? What does this really mean to you, right? What are the things that we need? What are the questions that we need to ask? We need to have those already prepared in our head. And then the second R is reposition. Is we need to turn it into something now we can handle. So now it's like, okay, so. And basically, we're recapping what they say to make sure that we've identified what the real objection is. So what you're telling me is, boom, I like this, but I don't want to pay this much more, or I'd rather have it in red than in blue, or something stupid like that, right? It's not stupid to the client, it's really to them. So then once we sit down and we've repositioned it and we got a handle on what they're saying or what they want, we make sure that this is the only objection. Because if not, as soon as we're ready to go and get into the buy, they're going to throw something else. They're going to keep throwing stuff at us to stall, to be able to wear us down. So what we're going to do is sit down and just sort of say, is this the only point stopping us from moving us from going ahead, right? Because if they say yes, then we can move ahead. If not, then we have to go back through the whole process. So we need to sit down and then we need to get their commitment. So before we move ahead, before we give them the answer, is so if I resolve that situation, if I can help you in that area, we are able to move ahead. Will you be able to make a decision today, right? And until you get an answer to yes, if they say no, we need to go in and say, okay, yeah, I understand this is a big decision. It's a lot of money. So so what are your concerns? And we go back through the emphasize, refine, reposition, isolate again. Only until they say, no, that seems about right. If we can get over that, we can move ahead. Now you overcome the objection. Okay, so so what we talked about earlier, boom, and you bring them back to how you've already brought this up in part of your presentation. Hope that makes sense, right? So now we go in and it's all really about understanding. We also said there's different negotiation styles. And what's our style? We have to, is it the best approach? We need to know which ones that we sort of have to pick sometimes, right? So if we're not aware of what those styles are, or our sales team isn't, then we don't know how to better what's our strategy when it comes to negotiations. But there's 4 major principles that we need to think about when it comes to negotiation. The first principle, write these down because it's important, is everything is negotiable, right? Everything's on the table when you sit down and negotiate. But the most important thing is the second one is it has to be a win-win solution, right? Like I was talking about before, if you go in there and sell them a high price and they're buying it, but they're not really happy paying that price or with the product that they got, they're not going to refer you, they're not going to come back, and you waste a lot of time and energy on that client. Whereas opposed to if you sold them and they didn't object and they just bought right away, it's like, oh man, did I pitch too low a price, right? So now you're thinking it. So it was a win for them, but not a win for you. So it has to be a win-win outcome. And then the third part is never negotiate until sold. They have to go through it. You've answered all their objections. They're ready to make a buy. And now we're negotiating value of that client. And remember, the fourth principle is that the power within negotiation is fluid. It's going to go back between you and your prospect each way, depending on where we stand. So when we sit down, we need to understand the ZOPA when we're negotiating, the zone of possible agreement. So we look at where's our range, the seller's range is, there's the worst case scenario, that's the lowest price that we would actually get for this product or service, and what's our desired price. Then we look at the buyer side, right? The buyer's got this he wants to buy it at the lowest price possible. Worst case scenario, he'll buy it in this case. And where our two ranges overlap, right? Sorry about that, is the zone of possible agreement, right here in the middle. This is where we sit down and if we have no value, if we're negotiating on price only, this is where we end up. If we're negotiating on value, this is where we end up, right? So we need to understand and have a system in place to help us and really just have our salespeople understand this is what we're trying to get to understand what we are negotiating. Because when it comes down to is we can't negotiate in one area, there has to be more valuable areas. What are some of the things that are tradable? What are the areas that are high value to a client, but low cost to us? So instead of, okay, you ordered this level of cabinets, but if we go ahead and close up this deal on this home today, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upgrade your cabinets. So instead of discounting the price, I'm giving them a higher grade value, right? And those values to the client is more than what the cost is to us. So we need to understand and negotiate what is valuable to the client and low cost to us. So let's review again and wrap up here is what are the three areas of our playbook that we need to put together? We need to first, before we go out and part of the trainings, we need to understand what our clients' compelling needs are. We need to understand what our credible solutions are. We need to understand our strengths compared to our competitors and also know how do we mitigate those weaknesses that we have. We need to identify what are all the things that make us as our product, our company, and us particular, what makes us credible to the client. Because once we have that, that's our tool bag that we can go to create once we have that winning proposition, now we can follow the 5 steps of that successful sale. So the value proposition is we created in step 1. Now we start working on what's our script framework, our funnel questions, what's our case study wins of showing how our product and services benefited our clients. And sometimes it's how are they living using our products and what are some possible killer stats that we have. And then finally, once we've presented our credible solution is what's our specific plan or system or methodology of how we all handle objections. You know, what are our negotiation strategies that we use? What are the value tools that your salespeople have available to them that they can negotiate? Because if you're thinking of this stuff on the spot, you're just winging it, and it usually never comes out good for you. And that's why you have to go in with a specific negotiation plan, and we take you through what are the steps of this plan of once we get to the sale, how are we going to negotiate, where do we need to go, and what do we need to do. It's a simple one-page thing that every salesperson should do before they go in and make their presentation. So hopefully that made some sense to you. I know I went through a lot of this fast. I wanted to at least give you a quick overview of what are the components that you need to do in your sales playbook. So when we sit down and we review, you have to take a look at it. Are you always competing on price, right? Why is that happening? Do you or your business do you have that system, consistent sales methodology that you use, or are you winging it? And maybe that's why you're competing on price all the time. Or do you have a written sales playbook that's customized to identify your client's compelling needs? So it's customized not only to your industry, but to your types of clients that you're targeting, and a way of overcoming objections while showing value for your product or service. Because an objection means they're telling you, I don't see the value. And so it's an opportunity to, again, stress value, so you're selling on value and price. So if this makes sense to you, I really appreciate everybody's time, all the people that have made it onto this webinar and are watching it at later times. This is going to be also for you too. So I want to offer everybody as a free 1-hour coaching session to really take a look at what are we doing, how do you take what you've learned today and how do we apply it into your business? And then the first step, what I'm going to also do is I'm going to add added value to, in addition to that free coaching session or questionnaire, is provide you with a questionnaire, a free sales IQ assessment. And what the sales IQ is going to explore different sales competency among you, and then eventually, if you look at it, we could give that to your host staff. But there's 16 different areas of the sales process that it goes through, and it goes through whether you are highly competent, highly advanced. What are the areas that where your strengths are and weaknesses are as a salesperson? If we get a whole team doing it, we can now it'll now merge all the scores together and take a look at where are we as a team, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and where do we need to focus our sales training on, right? And once we have that, our playbook, we'll know where to be able to sit down and to focus on them. And then one of the things I'm going to be doing is coming up and starting in the next couple of weeks is I am going to, or next month or so, is I'm going to be starting a group session for business owners or sales managers to be able to create that custom playbook that they can then take back to their sales team and be able to begin training their sales team on that. So if you're interested in that, please just go ahead and put your information in the chat box there. Give me your name, and I will give you a call back, and we'll schedule a time to be able to come back and to go through, give you your free session, go over your sales IQ assessment, and then see if that group workshop would be a great way for you and your company to benefit. So hopefully everybody here got some great value. I want to thank everybody here today for coming out here today. Again, if you want to schedule your free session, put your name in the chat box, or you got my contact information, give me a call, email me, and I really appreciate it. It's time to turn what we learned here today into action, and not just become a regular salesperson. It's time to become that rock star salesperson and begin to start creating that rock star sales team. Hope everybody had a great day and enjoy the week ahead. Take care. Bye.